Hello everyone, a very pleasant day to you. President Tinubu ignores calls, insists January 1 as commencement of new tax law. Nigerian Employers Consultative Association backs new tax laws, urges smooth implementation. And Rivers State Governor Fubara reshuffles cabinet, appoints Christopher Gray as Attorney General Commissioner for Justice. A very good day to you and welcome to First Nest News Port Harcourt. I am Becky Usoro. Now the news in full. Federal government has reaffirmed that Nigerians' new tax laws will commence fully on January 1, 2026, as scheduled. This meeting calls for suspension or delay amid rising public debates. President Tinubu declared that the new tax laws, including those that took effect on June 26, 2025, and the remaining acts scheduled to commence on January 1, 2026, will continue as planned. In a State House statement, the President said the tax reforms represent a once-in-a-generation opportunity to rebuild Nigerians' fiscal framework and strengthen the social contract between government and citizens. President Tinubu stressed that the reforms are not intended to increase taxes, but to deliver a structural reset that promotes fairness, harmonization, competitiveness, and dignity in the tax system. He acknowledged ongoing public discourse over alleged alterations to some provisions of the tax laws, but insisted that no substantive issue had been established to justify disrupting the reform process. The President reaffirmed his administration's commitment to due process and the integrity of enacted legislation, pledging cooperation with the National Assembly to address any genuine concerns that may arise during implementation. Away from that story, meanwhile, the federal government has reassured Nigerians that the new tax reforms set to take effect from January 1, 2026 will not involve automatic debits from personal bank accounts, and individuals do not need to provide explanations for transfers. Chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, Oyedele, gave the assurance while addressing widespread misconceptions surrounding the reforms, explained the process, and emphasized its simplicity and transparency. Oyedele said the new tax system simplifies reporting and ensures fair taxation for small businesses without burdening the vulnerable. Moving on, the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association (NECA) has expressed support for the implementation of new tax legislation scheduled to begin in January. The Director General of NECA, Wale Smart Oyerinde, who disclosed this at a media briefing in Lagos, commended the Presidential Committee of Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms for constructively engaging with all stakeholders in spite effort to misinform the Nigerian populace on its intention. Oyerinde urged the Federal Inland Revenue Service (FIRS) to collaborate with the organized private sector in a bid to deepen awareness on the new tax laws. The DG said that the tax reform legislation remained a significant item that had witnessed the most excellent form of organized chaos in Nigerians' political history, while urging the federal government to proceed with implementation of the laws as the issue of alteration raised by the National Assembly is not sufficient to hinder same, considering its economic objectives. Moving on, Senator Abdulaziz Yari has emerged as a new chairman of the board of Geragu Power PLC after the exit of billionaire businessman Femi Otedola in a transaction that has seen him. Otedola divested his 77% of his controlling stake in the power generation company. A filing by Geragu Power PLC on the Nigerian exchange NJX website showed that the transaction was executed through the sale of Otedola's 95% stake in Amperian Power Distribution Company Limited to MAM Energy Limited, a Nigerian firm. Aside from Yari, who now heads the board, Usman Go Mohammed, as well as Sani Jafaru and Uzamaka Adugu, amongst others, have been appointed as independent non-executive directors of the power company. Away from that story, the federal government has dismissed the allegation of targeting opposition in its anti-graft war. Minister of Information and National Orientation Mohammed Idris clarified that the government has no plan to unlawfully arrest, detain, or persecute opposition figures. The clarification, Idris said, was in response to what he called the fabricated document in circulation alleging the establishment of a non-existent multi-agency task force for a purported program tagged ADP4VIP, Arrest, Detain, Prosecute for Very Important Persons. The minister said the baseless document falsely claims that a task force comprising the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC), the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission (ICPC), and the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit (NFRU), coordinated by the Office of the National Security Advisor, aims to aggressively target prominent opposition figures without due process. He noted that the authors of the deliberate disinformation imprudently cite multiple credible sources to allege a planned systematic weakening and neutralization of opposition political activity, particularly within the African Democratic Congress (ADC). Moving on to Rivers State. Rivers State Governor Sir Siminalayi Fubara has made a minor adjustment to his cabinet, appointing a new Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice. During an executive meeting, Governor Fubara redeployed Barrister Christopher Green, previously the Commissioner of Sports Development, to the Ministry of Justice to serve as the Honorable Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice. The move follows the dissolution of some cabinet members affected by the Supreme Court judgment on the state's recent political crisis, which has left the position of Attorney General vacant. A statement by Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Information and Communications, Dr. Ono Sirawu, Barrister Green will continue to oversee the activities of the Ministry of Sports until substantive commissioner is appointed to the ministry. The redeployment effectively immediately was approved at the final State Executive Council meeting of 2025. The governor described the decision as part of his commitment to strengthen governance, ensuring continuity in service delivery, and optimizing the performance of key ministers in Rivers State. Away from that story, presidential hopeful and former governor of Anambra State, Peter Obi, has announced his intention to contest the 2027 presidential election. Obi, who made the announcement during an interactive section on X hosted by @Obedient Update, puts pay to months of speculation over his future political plans. The X space attracted thousands of participants, underscoring Obi's continued influence in Nigerian's political landscape ahead of the 2027 general election. The former Anambra State governor used the opportunity to address some of Nigerians' critical challenges in the areas of economy, security, and governance. We now move on to the foreign scene. Israel says it will revoke the licenses of 37 aid groups working in Gaza and the occupied West Bank, saying they failed to meet requirements under new registration rules. While non-international non-governmental organizations such ActionAid, the International Rescue Committee, and the Norwegian Refugee Council are among those that will have their licenses suspended on 1st January, with operations to end within 60 days. Israel said the groups, amongst other things, had failed to hand over complete personal details to their staff. The move was heavily criticized by foreign ministers from 10 countries, including the UK, who said the new rules were restrictive and unacceptable. In a joint statement, the foreign ministers of the UK, France, Canada, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Japan, Norway, Sweden, and Switzerland said the forced closure of in-go operations would have a severe impact on access to essential services, including healthcare. They added that the humanitarian situation in Gaza remained catastrophic and called on Israel's government to ensure in-goes were able to operate in a sustained and predictable way. Israel's Ministry of Diaspora Affairs, which is in charge of registration application, said the new measures would not impact the flow of humanitarian assistance to Gaza. We now move on to sports. The Super Eagles of Nigeria secured a 3-1 victory over Uganda in their final Group C match at the African Cup of Nations AFCON 2025, finishing the group stage with a perfect 9 points and sending the East African side home. Raphael Oyedika scored twice, while Paul Onuachu netted his first international goal in 4 years to guide the Super Eagles to their third win in 3 games. Uganda reduced to 10 men in the second half following goalkeeper Salim Magolo's red card, struggled to respond until substitute Ruggers Kasim Mato pulled one back in the 75th minute. Nigerians' first breakthrough came in the 28th minute when Onuachu poked home Fisayo Dede Bashiru's cross after an incisive move, putting the Super Eagles 1-0 up at halftime. Onyedika doubled the lead in the 62nd minute, slotting the ball through the goalkeeper's legs. Following a precise pass from Samuel Chukwueze 5 minutes later, he scored again to make it 3-0 after Chukwueze cutback set him for a clinical finish. Uganda's lone goal arrived in the 75th minute as substitute Mato Clevery chipped the ball over Nigerian's goalkeeper Francis Uzoho after being set up by Joseph Okelo. The goal, however, was not enough to avert elimination, with Tanzania's 1-1 draw against Tunisia confirming Uganda's exit. Group C concluded with Nigeria top with 9 points, Tunisia second with 4 points, and Tanzania third, advancing as one of the 4 best third-place teams. Uganda finished bottom of the group with a single point. That's all on the news this hour. I am Becky Osoro. Many thanks for watching. Bye for now.